What does it take to push the world's greatest superpower to the brink? It's not always a declaration of war. Sometimes it starts with a single, audacious move. At 5:23 p.m. local time, a U.S. Air Force RO-4 Global Hawk reconnaissance drone was cruising above the Black Sea near international airspace, quietly monitoring Russian fleet movements along the Crimean coast. The skies had been tense for weeks, but that day, everything would change in a matter of seconds. Unknown to the drone operators, a pair of Russian Su-27 flanker jets, scrambled from Belbek Air Base, had locked onto the Global Hawk's position. Using aggressive intercept tactics, one Su-27 executed a dangerously close pass, then deliberately released jet fuel across the drone's sensors. What happened next crossed a line. The second Su-27 clipped the drone's wing with its own, causing the R-4 to spiral downward into the Black Sea. Though unmanned, this was the first time in decades a U.S. military asset was brought down by direct Russian contact, and Washington took notice. Located on board the Global Hawk was some of the Pentagon's most sensitive surveillance equipment, designed to monitor electronic emissions and missile launches within a 1,000 kilometers radius. Its loss was no small incident. The RQ-4's onboard systems had automatically recorded electronic signatures before impact, confirming Russian intent. This was no accident. Within hours, NORAD surveillance assets picked up chatter from Russian air defense operators celebrating the intercept. The message was clear. Russia thought it could act with impunity, but the US wasn't about to let that slide. The moment that drone hit the water, alarms rang across the Pentagon. Within minutes, high-level strategy rooms lit up. Generals, NATO brass, and Cyber Command all pulled into emergency calls. Behind closed doors, a response began to take shape. Deadly, deliberate, and silent. Until it wouldn't be. 44 minutes later, at 6:07 p.m. local time, a U.S. MQ-9 Reaper drone took off from Incirlik Air Base in Turkey. Its mission was critical: monitor Russian naval activity in the Black Sea and track enemy air defense systems lighting up across southern Ukraine. Flying just 60 miles south of Crimea, the Reaper's onboard sensors began scanning for radar signals from S-300 launchers and identifying movement from the Russian Black Sea Fleet. What started as surveillance was about to turn into something far more dangerous. Frustrated by the international backlash from the Global Hawk incident, Russian forces weren't backing down. Instead, they attempted a show of dominance again by firing a 9M96 missile from an S-350 launcher stationed near Sevastopol. The target? A U.S. Reaper drone patrolling nearby. No warning shot, just a high-speed attempt to swat it out of the sky. While nowhere near as advanced as a manned F-22, the Reaper drone wasn't blind. 69 radar warning receiver lit up just 6 seconds after the missile launched. A sharp electronic scream that meant one thing: you're being hunted, with no time to escape or climb out of range. The drone immediately triggered its full countermeasure suite, a last-ditch effort to survive what was coming. Chaff and flares blanketed the sky as the drone began sharp, evasive maneuvers. Though largely autonomous, the drone operators made a split-second call: stay on station. In the chaos, the 9M96's lock broke momentarily, but shrapnel from the missile's warhead punched holes through the Reaper's rear stabilizer. Badly damaged but still flying, the drone turned and limped back to base. This wasn't a training exercise anymore. Russia had nearly taken out 2 U.S. assets back-to-back. It was no longer a provocation. It was a challenge. And now, a message had to be sent. Just 7 hours later, orders came down from the White House and U.S. European Command. The response wouldn't come screaming from a fighter jet. It would rise from the depths of the sea. At 1:42 a.m. local time, the USS Roosevelt, a guided missile destroyer lurking in the Mediterranean, received one simple set of encrypted orders: move into position, prepare to fire. Normally, a conventional Tomahawk would do the job. But this time, the Pentagon wanted to make a point. Each DDG-class destroyer carries a party mix of weaponry: Tomahawks, SM-2s, ESSMs, and most crucially, the SM-6, usually reserved for intercepting enemy aircraft. This missile had recently been reprogrammed to strike ground targets at hypersonic speeds, and that's exactly what they planned to use. Intelligence from satellites showed that the S-350 launcher and its accompanying 96L6 radar system were still positioned outside Sevastopol. With a max speed of 34 miles per hour, the launcher might already be moving, making speed the most critical factor. Within 30 minutes, the Roosevelt's fire control team plotted a launch route with over a dozen waypoints. The missile wouldn't fly in a straight line. Instead, it would bend, dip, and zigzag, outmaneuvering every known Russian SAM-net. At 3:45 a.m., two SMS-XS erupted from the VLS tubes, silent at first, then thunderous. 6 minutes later, Russian radar sites went dark. Imagery confirmed a direct hit. The S-350 launcher was obliterated. 8 Russian personnel confirmed Kia. But the US wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. Because when you mess with America, you don't just get a missile, you get a message. As the wreckage cooled in Crimea, Washington played its next card, quietly, surgically. They didn't need more jets. They needed leverage. And they found it in Ukraine. Within 48 hours, shipments of US HIMARS and long-range missiles were rolling in. Not for defense, but for payback. These weren't standard rounds. These were designed to reach deep behind Russian lines, to strike the very bases that ordered the drone attacks. And the results were immediate. Russian ammo dumps exploded in fireballs. Radar sites blinked out like dead stars. Ukrainian artillery, armed with American eyes and precision, hit targets the Russians didn't even know were exposed. At night, the skies lit up with HIMARS strikes, each one a reminder that you don't get to mess with US air power and walk away clean. When Russian jets tried to strike back, they were blown out of the sky by US-supplied Patriots. By the end of the week, Russia wasn't just defending its front lines, it was scrambling to protect its own rear. America didn't just hit back, it flipped the battlefield. These weren't just strikes. These were a message. You down a drone, we erase a base. But while this operation crippled Russia's ability to operate freely in Crimea, the war was far from over. That battle would come another day. And this is exactly why you don't mess with the United States. But here's the thing, this wasn't the first time someone made that mistake. Months earlier, on the other side of the world, another enemy thought they could take a shot at America and walk away. They were wrong. It started just past 5 p.m. in the skies above the Red Sea. A US F-16 fighter jet was on patrol, providing air cover for a Navy task force cruising near the coast of Yemen. Everything seemed routine, nothing out of the ordinary. Out of nowhere, a surface-to-air missile fired by Houthi rebels locked onto the American jet. The pilot dropped fast, releasing flares and jamming signals. One wrong move, and he would have been ripped out of the sky. He dodged the hit, but barely. This time the message was loud and clear. Someone had just tried to kill an American pilot. This was an attack aimed directly at American pride. That's all US needed to hear. Within hours, actions were taken. A US Navy destroyer moved in closer to the Yemeni coast, locked onto the site that fired the missile at the jet, and launched a missile. The explosion lit up the desert night. The launcher? Gone. The operators? Eliminated. The radar site? Vaporized. But America wasn't done. Just a few hours later, the skies above the Red Sea roared to life again. This time with US fighter jets taking off from a nearby carrier. They weren't carrying warnings. They were carrying payback. Wave after wave, the jets launched precision airstrikes on Houthi missile stockpiles, radar stations, and command bunkers. Each target, handpicked and destroyed. And while the skies burned, another US destroyer launched a full salvo of cruise missiles straight into the heart of enemy territory, leveling everything that was left. By the time the sun rose the next morning, the number of casualties told the story. And not a single US casualty. What started as a sneak attack ended in total destruction. And to be clear, this wasn't just a strike. It was a message. If you come after an American jet, we'll come after your entire network. If you fire on a drone, we'll level your base before breakfast. If you think the US won't respond, you're already one step from the grave. Because when the United States is pushed, it doesn't fall back, it fires back. And when it does, it's not with words, it's with everything